Hey everybody, we're back and welcome to today's lesson about how to, or what I think when I encounter major chords and how to handle um, improvising over a two, a four, or a five major chord, and how to know the difference and navigate everything. What I think, what are the core bits of information layer by layer that get me available to think about this so that you can approach this improvising with, well, you can get there too, I think, rapidly if someone just gets you this information level by level. And so here's the lesson. Let's dive in the limited time that I have before my window of opportunity here with a quiet location ends and it starts getting noisy, too noisy to make a video. So let's get moving here. So let me adjust some screen things here, and I'll be disappearing like last time because some of my presentations here stretch over the video window, and you don't need to see me anyways. And my cool House of Guitars, 645 Titus Avenue, Rochester, New York t-shirt. And cool, except somewhat useless for video presentations. Fretboard, what do you call that? Tree of Life inlay, fretboard, guitar. So anyways, that being said, this video goes along with my similar video about the three minor chords in the major scale. We just went over that. I'll hopefully be able to link to it, and you guys can do that thing where I point up toward the video and it links and you click on it, but it probably doesn't work like that in my videos because I'm not tech savvy like that. So the link will be somewhere, probably at the end of the video. And it goes along with that video. I think in this video, I upgraded. I was able, after seeing some things I could have done better in the minor video, I think I've got them, this one presented a little bit better. Definitely, there's some more slides here. So I think that's really good. But let's get into it. In the very first part here, we have a presentation very similar to the last one. And for anyone that's just joining into this video, we're going to start again with the basics to just try to get everyone from ground zero. So if you are an intermediate player and you know all this stuff, well, hang on or fast forward to get through some of this stuff. So to start with major chords. Now, what we have down here is a major chord shape. This cowboy chord right here. Not something I'll actually only use the what I call the middle three there, the D, G, and B strings, the little triad shape there. But great chord for thinking about this because you get your 6-string root to locate any note quickly. So that's the first part of it. Is someone is going to call out, okay, this is a 2 major chord, and it's in the key of, or it's a B minor, it's an F sharp, whatever, it's a G, nice and easy. So right off the bat, your 6-string roots, you can find that easy. G, A sharp, which is where we'll be today. No, today we're going to be in B, sorry. B, and D, C, C flat. Haha, just catching you there. Okay, so anyways, that's why we're using that chord. There is another 6-string root chord. Oh, I was going to say that 6-string roots also provide us the ability to have knowledge of a chord tone on every string, which is important. There is another 6-string root chord that will work, and it also carries from the same root, but it's much harder to finger, and it's the G-shaped chord. We'll slide it up to a B there. Not something I'm going to be able to grab really quick on the guitar. I might use it for an arpeggio or in a solo context, thinking quick. But I would just use this. What's pictured here in the guitar box here, and just in a random spot. So I didn't draw out a full fretboard. It's just an example of the shape of the chord that we all know. Okay, moving on. So to start with, I basically have this information in my head. Starting in line 1 here, I know my intervals. I know it's root, flat, the flat 2, the regular 2, the flat 3, the 3, the 4, the 5, and so on and so forth. I know that a typical major scale, well, any major scale, and there's no sharps or flats. That's why most all music theory videos use the key of C. And for all the beginners that go, well, why isn't it A? Because don't worry about that. It's a whole long video, that explanation that's really kind of just, doesn't really make a difference here or there. It's just an old school thing that had happened. Anyway, so I know that a major scale follows the root and the whole numbers. So root, skip the flat 2, the 2, skip the flat third, the 3, and the 4, and the 5, 6, and 7. That's helpful to know. Moving on. So that gives us our numbers. This is where the natural numbers come from. You just take the C and you call it the 1. Take the D and call it the 2. And you'll see it falls on the 2 of the scale. It's called the 3 because not only is it the third note of the scale, but it falls on the natural third. And the F is the 4, and the G is the 5. And that's where these numbers are coming from. They're pulled directly out of the scale, and they're also the numerical numbers of the chords in a row of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do in a row. Okay, let's move on from there. In the next row, I've made a list. This is what I had to do in the beginning to get it all memorized, and then it was easy. And I didn't have to memorize this anymore, but I use a capital M for major, small m for minor, and you just learn the order in the scale because it doesn't follow like major, 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 minor, 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 diminished. It doesn't work like that, of course. That's why music theory is theory, or confusing to some people, and kind of keeps the people who don't want to learn anything in a distance, and the people who want to rise above to a level of knowledge about music, something to think about. There's something they have to study, but it's not every time you realize any of these concepts, you're going to look back and go, man, that really was nothing. It just seems alien at first because everything is kind of encoded right behind this kind of wall of geometry, I almost think at times. So anyways, we have major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. And diminished, we're just not going to worry about for this lesson. We're only concentrating on these two lessons on the most popular chords used in the major scale, the major and minor chords. You can kind of think to make diminished easy and get it out of your but what about diminished mind. Poor old diminished. Just think of it as a leading chord. Anytime you have this diminished chord, you can think of it as leading to as a way to get to the one chord. I don't even think that was the right fingering, just because I'm so not playing it very often. That's maybe a better version of it. Anyways, moving on. So majors first, then minor, then minor, then major. On the 1, on the 4, on the 5. And hence why you hear such popularity, common speak when you're hearing music theory speak and you don't know what anybody's talking about, but you always hear this 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1. And you can just hear those chords ring together fairly nicely, as opposed to something like, there's something a little jarring there for reasons I won't get into. Just not in both chords from not a related scale. Anyways, that being said, so how do we get to these major and minor chords? Well, this is the understanding you use, the knowledge of chords, just basic chord theory right here. A chord, a triad, your most basic chord, which is going to be 3 notes. Why not 2 notes? Because 2 notes is a dyad. It's simple harmony, and this is a little more complex harmony. There's 3 different tones ringing harmonious together. You have to know these intervals to get that harmony out. And this is a common way to make happy and sad harmony. How does it work? Well, as you can see here, the only 2 different notes between a major and minor chord are the gut notes here. The flat third, the difference between a flat third and a regular third. And as you can imagine, a flat tire, not as pleasing as a regular tire. So flat tire kind of sad, and regular tire kind of good to go. Happy to roll. So how does this scale provide these two different chords? Why aren't they all major or all minor? Why isn't a minor scale all minor chords and a major scale all major chords? That's what I remember being confused about when I was a beginner. Well, first, a little more about chords here. The same old diatribe. You'll notice that the beginning and ending are the same because those are like the shell notes. And these shell notes are made of a root, and we get past the twos, past the threes, past the four, the flat five, to a five. The one and the five, you're going to constantly hear as you get used to music theory about the five chord. The five and the one, the five leads to the one, the five is the farthest away in the scale from the one. The outside of the scale, technically the flat fifth is the tritone, is the middle of the road, horrible middle of the road, or YYZ. Cool, right? Anyways, but in scale purposes, the five is that farthest away note. So, and you'll know that from your power chords if you've learned. So that's why the five is like a shell. Then you can consider these two stable container notes for something inside, for the middle note to be inside. And this middle note, the minor third, is going to create this wavelength of basically harmonic frequency. The math is a little more unstable than the difference between both of those chords was just simply switching from this note to that note. How are they constructed? You can see here that you skip two intervals, and this is the real meat and potatoes here. This is all you really need to know, aside from my extra rambling there to get everybody up to speed. I'm talking fast here also because I'm just trying to get through this lesson before I get interrupted. If you need to slow it down, pause it, rewind it, slow the video, whatever. Anyways, I can't stand videos that talk really slow, so but I know you can't really reach a speed that everybody is comfortable with, so you'll have to deal with what you find today. Anyways, so we've got two intervals, and you get to the third, then three intervals. And notice that the happy chord, the major, is the exact opposite. It's three intervals and then two intervals to get to the five. So you can see that here in the scale. If we start with just the C, chords skip a tone. So C, don't play D, play E, don't play F, play G. C, E, G. C, E, G. Let's take a look at the spacing here. C, we have three tones to get to E, then two tones to get to G. That tells us this is a root, and you can see here it's a major third and a five. Now, let's take a note like D. Now, we don't get the quality of seeing the intervals because we don't have D underneath the root, so we'll have to figure it out for ourselves, but we would go D, F, A as the notes in D, just simply skipping letters of the alphabet to get to our chord tones. So if we go to D to F, see there's a half step between E and F, so that creates only two interval choices or notes or semitones to get to F, or well, two in between. Let's just say that the way you can say it is semantically different, and the way people sometimes understand it is different, but we just count two and get to F. Then we count 1, 2, 3 tones and get to the A. So you can see here that we've got the 2 to get to the third, and then the 3 to get to the 5. So that's a minor chord, and you can see it reflected in the scale. Well, the same goes for E, and the same goes for A, and what we covered in our last lesson, what to do when you encounter the 2, the 3, or the 6. And today's lesson is the 1, the 4, and the 5. And you can see here 1 major, 4 major, 5 major. So if you're new, brand new, just approaching this theory jazz jargon, this is all you really need to write down, to study, a couple of days in a row, and you'll start to go like, okay, I think that makes sense, especially as you start hearing this stuff on your fretboard. And you get a lesson like this that allows you to really experiment with these tones. So, okay, moving on. Um, as a quick, let's check out the four here just to reinforce everything. F, A, C. You could see F to A, there's three tones. And then A to C, there's the two tones in between. So we've got the three and the two. There we go. Proving without a shadow of a doubt, major, five major, and one major. Now, for everyone who's said, wait a minute, I heard this weird thing. Every time someone says five, they say dominant seven. That's when you add a fourth note to a chord, and that is one of these sevens. Typically, a major chord has one of these sevens, a minor chord has one of these sevens. This chord happens to get one of these sevens. We're not going to go over why, but that's just how it falls. And because it's the only major chord that gets this seven, and it is what makes it give it that dominant sound or that somewhat unstable sound, that it's got like a little piece of minor in there that wants to make it fall back to the major chord. And of course, yeah, that's just how it works. So we're beyond this page. Let's move to our next page. So the next page is now the next thing I'm going to think about when I have any chord, before I get to whether it's a two, a one, a four, or a five, I want to be able to do a little jamming over it quick. Just to kind of, if someone yelled this out in a band sequence, I want to be able to have instant notes under my fingers, enough notes that I could cover a couple of bars of jamming before I need to think about anything else. That's one great thing. If these things still require some thought for you, is to create some steps that allow you to think while you're doing, actually able to perform faster than you're able to conceptualize things. So in our instance today, someone has called out a B major chord, and whether they said it's a two, I'm sorry once again because I just used to doing this this minor lesson I just did. So one, four, or five. So even if they called out it's a one, oh, this is the four chord. We're in Lydian. We're in Mixolydian. Five. It doesn't matter. What I'm going to teach you with pentatonics will work over all of these chords, because pentatonics leave the ketones, the two ketones that will nail one, four, or five. They leave those out. So pentatonic is just giving you a pool of five notes that work for all three chords. Don't ask how, it's magic, and here we go. Well, it's not magic, but yeah. So which pentatonic? All right, so we have a choice of pentatonics. Now, very commonly, we can see there's an X here, and we're using this pentatonic today. Now, I definitely used to conceptualize this for everything minor and major. And there are purposes to using this very handy, common pentatonic shape, the only shape I knew for years and years. Or in today's major context. However, as you can see here, the root, it's great for minor because the root is right there and you get that cowboy chord right inside of it. The major chord is that G-shaped chord that we talked about earlier. It's a six-string root because, well, the root there's on the sixth string. It's major, but it's that harder to play chord. And what makes everything a little easier is if you use its neighboring pentatonic that we can see here on the fretboard diagram, how they're actually joined together. And you always want to think about these shapes. I used to have struggle thinking about these other shapes because I would always think of them as a separate place to go on the fretboard. So I'm here playing and I'm thinking, oh, where's that other shape? And then I'm going to play it, not realizing that I'm playing the notes I was just playing are in both shapes. Once you're in one place, you're already linked to the other. And that is common for just about every scale that you learn on the fretboard. It's a really handy way to think and get these concepts easier to memorize. Instead of thinking in separate places and a whole separate memory bank of ideas, think of connections. think of once you're in one place, you're already halfway into another place, and it makes getting to the next place so much easier in this gray matter area of the fretboard. Okay, moving on. So X out this shape for major. Let's use its neighbor one. We've got the root here, just when they're conjoined together. Here they're separate, so you can kind of see them. And you got the major chord right here in that shape. So let's play around with that a little bit. If you play lines from this scale that work toward these, we'll talk about this in another slide in depth, work toward these tones, you can make this shape sound nice and musical and have a ton of stuff. And I bent one of the notes, which was this gray tone right here. And we'll talk about what are the gray tones, what are these tones in our next slide. But so what I would think of next, this is what I would conceptualize first. So the very first thing, I would have this pool of notes. Or here how I landed on it. I went, in chord, out chord to stall, to kind of give you a little suspense, then to chord tone, roots. To bring that line, the feeling of my line of being somewhere and then coming home. And that creates the basics of a well thought out line. But we're getting to that, so let's not jump ahead here. Let's get to where my next thought would be the full pentatonics. Then I would know not only do I have this shape here, there I am, all the way up in this shape up here, just working through my own mental visualizations, I played a little here, then I thought I'd go a little bit here, then I ended up here, using kind of my ear to guide, this idea of shapes in my ear to guide my line all the way through here. And that's it. So just know your pentatonic shapes. Of course, you've got after the shape, you've got this one here. I like this shape here. This is where it says, oh, by the way, these are numbered. So we're calling today this shape then your number 1 shape. This shape will be your number 2. I had to, to avoid the jumble and confusion, I put the brackets, underneath and on top. So you can see I'm bracketing this shape right here. I find that to be one of the coolest sounding pentatonics to play through. And it's one of the most troublesome ones because an important square box that we're going to talk about is broken, but it's the same exact notes. I'll show you here. It's this little part right here. You see the plus sign is on this note, then this note, this note, and then this note. We've got it's the same as, now I'm down here playing, it's the same as this big box. All right, moving on. So we know all our full pentatonics. Now we have a big fretboard pool of notes just like that will work over the 1, the 4, or the 5, Just the same way that the same concept, if you're plugging your minor chord in right, works. All 5 shapes work over the minor chord for 2, 3, or 6. And by the way, something I wanted to say earlier too is some people was like, well, I know 1, 4, and 5. You just do that L shape, and that's true. Now I got my 5th string root chord underneath the 1, the 4. Then I'm going to make it that's dominant 7th by removing my middle finger off that note there for the 5, and then back to the 1. Very basic. And the same thing holds true for major. Move up a whole step, and now you've got a minor chord. The 2. Underneath that is the well, that's the 5 chord. It's what do you do here? What do we do? We get the what is it? 6, 2, 3, and so yeah. So we have the 2 or 3 of the next to each other. So we're gonna put those on the. So we got to go down here. Actually, we use our pentatonic scale that we know and love. That I should have known to create our from the same key I was just in for. So from let's say B major. Go down to A flat, you've got your 6, then your 2, and your 3, and your... Hit a major there. Well, anyways, so there's all them chords in the scale. But anyways, you can learn them in that L shape. However, that's good for jamming the chords quickly, but it doesn't get you to improvise, which is what we're talking about today. Or know, your fretboard pool of notes. So you got all 5 here that will work. Now, in that pentatonic understanding, as a bonus, I do want to know my triad shapes in there, and you can see right here I've got them listed. And not only do I have the triads listed, okay, but I have the shading to go along with the other notes to create caged. That's why I said full pentatonics. I should have said full pentatonics with triads and caged. Now these are the DGB triads, or your what do you call that? 2, 3, 4 triads, your 2nd string, 3rd string, and 4th string, B, G, and D. But however, you can see the other notes will create, and then caged is listed here. So instead of the numbers for numbering the pentatonics that we're showing you here, you want to understand how does caged overlay into these pentatonics. When you've got these pentatonics under your fingers, you've got caged too, which is awesome. And a lot of people don't realize that they're learning all these separate topics. They don't realize that they've already learned these topics. They just have to realize the layout of the fretboard and how everything is overlapped together. So anyways, we have but in this instance, it starts with G instead of C, but you can see your C, A, G. The G is the same. We've got an octave version on the fretboard to give you a lot of pool of notes here. So C, A, G, E, D, caged. Okay, so starting with the E shape, which is what we're playing here as our cowboy chord. That's called the E shape. These come from the open chord shapes. The C shape, the D shape. Okay, hopefully we're up to speed on those. And so you're understanding this nomenclature. Is that the word? Nomenclature? I don't know. Okay, so here's our triad shapes. I'm going to know those. So I got, oops, sorry, wrong chord. Someone yells out B, major is what we're playing. I don't know, 2, 4. Here I go again with the 2. I got 2 on the brain. 1, 4, 5, we don't know. Whatever they yelled out. Yeah. So that was me just bouncing around chord tones, picking a couple of the lighter gray notes and back to chord tones. None of the outside notes I played. Well, I did when I made a mistake, but you can try to, as you can see, you can fix any of those mistakes. Well, when you're only doing pentatonics, if you land in one of these, you're going to be sort of right and wrong, and you're definitely the more wrong a note sounds, just move forward one square, and you should be able to get back to a good note. Unless you landed on like one that's, well, never mind. Um, and that'll be definitely the trick when we move into what we call here, we're pentatonic. We're going to end diatonic, meaning we understand all the notes of our scale. And that's coming up. So, but before I go from this one, I think I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope we understand our triad shapes here, that they're, and where they are. Whenever I need to think about, like, I'm like, oh, where exactly is it? When I say here's and here's and here, and I don't want to get it wrong, I just think about the octave between this note. That's going to be the bottom of my next shape. So the top note is always the bottom note of your next shape. So I can see, now this one is kind of hard to grab correctly, but all I need to think about is that, so I know where I'm going to put my bottom note. Grab it correctly, and since I didn't look, I grabbed it wrong. Okay, thought it was on a fret marker because I was thinking about the wrong shape. Okay, so above here, I wrote something down to remind myself to give you a little another kind of little advantage lesson. The advantages of harmony and triads. Check this out. So here's our triads. Now that was pretty much part of what I wanted. I hit something wrong, but I knew how to correct it. I'm like, oops, I'm too high. But it would kind of could work. There's music there. You get more freedom to make mistakes the greater the harmony. Is it's my personal takes. Nothing I was ever taught. Just my experience that I'm finding in my jamming is the more harmony you're making, meaning chordal harmony, triad harmony here, tertiary harmony, I guess. You get some advantages. So let me show you this. There I'm just hitting the wrong, quote unquote, wrong triad, but I'm sliding up into it and it sounds musical. Mess around. You'll see that, for example, just using like a line. There was kind of some leading around there, but it was, just one note, one string, what's going on, how does it work, what's going on. Now here, you can hear where we're heading back to a similar sound. We're away, sliding right into a familiar sound, which is familiar yet different enough to be like to get some musicality out of it, because these are inversions of these chords. As you can see here, our most straight up and down 1, 3, 5 is this one that comes out of our bar chord here. When we play this one down here, it works as the same chord. However, the 5 is on top, so you could consider like almost the 5 as the root. But because you have the 5, the 1, and the 3, they work as the same chord. And then here's the 3, the 5, and the 1. So there we go. And we understand cage, the advantages of harmony, and starting to get some music out of these pentatonic shapes versus just noodling. Because if you just know the pentatonics and stop there, cool, but you may end up noodling, especially when you're new and just not really using your ear, and you're not really understanding how lines work in regards to tension and release. Something I did not understand until I really started thinking about it, and years of noodling went by, and it started to, my ears developed, and is still developing, of course. And so you want to begin that development. And if you're at the beginning, you don't really, you won't really be able to be very functional with just the pentatonics without these further understandings. So another helpful thing is to know where are your root notes, because as we'll see in the next lesson, these are going to be like the greatest ways to complete a line, to bring your lines to an ending and say, all right, I'm done at the end of your phrase, at the end of your 16 bars, of course, and when you end, you might you can do little tricks like that to be. All right, so you want to know where your roots are. Somewhat important. And let's move on from there, because what's really going to make a difference is not only knowing where your roots are, but knowing all your chord tones now is what we have here. This is what you really want to elucidate. So let's go over what I wrote down here. Keep in mind, so what you want to understand now is that these pentatonic shapes are giving you the chord tones as 3 of the notes of this pentatonic shape, pentatonic structure all over your fretboard. Now, what is missing, or what else are you getting? Well, because there's 2 gray notes on this thing, aside from a red 5, a blue 3, happy blue 3, right, for the 3rd, and green for the 1, your go. Your 5 is your 5th, which is a good place to get to. And your gray notes are your 2 and your 6. And as you can see here, under our logical lines lesson that I'll get to in a second, which I've sort of been alluding to the last few paragraphs here, the R is, your root. It's the full end of any phrase. You want to really bring something to a close to start a new phrase, it's the root. A nice temporary ending is the 3rd and the 5th. These are not hard and fast rules, but as a general, if you want to make logical lines that have some kind of sense above noodling, then you're going to treat your 2 and a 6. These are all treatments. It doesn't have to be exact rules. Remember, theory isn't about rules. It's just about a guide for what's going on and why do you like what you hear. And very typically, the 2 and the 6 are going to be your steps away when you need to travel away from the root. When you need to get some interest into your playing, it's going to be a way to build that tension, because things are perhaps I think the mentality goes is that this is where you're stepping away from the chord and perhaps stepping into a wrong note, and that gets a listener's ear to go, oh, mistake is going to happen. I knew it. You can't play. And when you take those steps away and come back, it says, wow, someone knows what they're doing. And I don't know how it works, but that sounds cool. And that's where that happens. And it also kind of works just to jog the emotions, give a full emotional kind of a workout, if you will, versus, safety and that feeling of being away from home. Okay, so you get all chord tones plus the 2 and the 6. For future reference, that leaves out the 4 and the 7, and those are the 2 notes coming up that we're going to learn to plug in to create our ability to know whether we are playing a 1, a 4, or a 5 for sure. But until that point, and by the way, those are the half steps. Notice that one thing we're missing in here are any half steps. And those can be great for melodic sounds, and they're missing here, which gives the pentatonic that kind of haunting, sparse sound that is popular with many soloists because of that, for that reason. So there's, money notes. Those half steps are good to milk certain things out, but they're also, it's also has a flavor to leave them completely out and just play pentatonics. So if you really only learn this, you could handle 99% of all your jamming just knowing this and never playing the money notes. But it does help to nail certain sounds for certain times, because those are flavor notes. They're going to give a specific modal flavor, if you will, to those chord tones. Or if you're playing modes and you want to elucidate those sounds, you're going to want these tones. But until then, we've just got the 2 and the 6 to deal with. Awesome. So we've got 3 inside notes, 2 outside notes, totally easy, and every mistake note in between. So next thing here, before we get more into logical lines, we've covered chord tones. Okay, let's X that out. We got logical lines coming up. Great shape for soloing with this asterisk here around the C. I find that this, even though we're, considering our shape here as our main shape because of the chord, another great shape is the one 2 shapes up or 1 shape over. Skip the D shape here, go to the C shape here. Because on the high, you get the maximum use out of the high strings with an arpeggio shape there, root 3/5, and an away note. At some point, I sounded what I felt during those lines I played somewhat not logical, and then I tried to steer it towards logical by going into chord tones, and then got a little boring there, so I went to really end the line to one away using the chord tones. That's all chord tones. So there I've elucidated the chord as much as I can. Time to go. And because I'm walking through, pointing in the direction 2 chord tones on an offbeat, I can put in one of these outside notes. Especially if I've gotten a little boring, might slip one of those in. And, top of all this lessons about, you know, what notes, what chords, what notes, remember there's the second most important thing, or probably almost even one of the most important things, is you learn what your drummer is doing and the rhythm. I'm just at myself learning to hear music for the rhythm. I've been so engrossed my whole life with, you know, just listening to what the guitarist is doing, what's the guitarist doing, maybe what the bassist is doing, and how does that all work, what chords and what scale did they use, that I forget that a lot of this stuff depends importantly on the rhythm, because what they're doing with these chord tones is in conjunction with that rhythm. That you just think, oh, it's just music, but it's more important than that. Okay, moving on. So we've got the C scale as a nice, let's go over logical lines here. Now I'm going to play, now remember, keeping your ears. I don't have a way right now to play a chord, and I apologize. A looper pedal doesn't work well with this Spark amplifier that I use as an interface. And, well, it would, but I just don't have it plugged in, and the my keyboard doesn't, it's one of the MIDI keyboards. It doesn't work with this studio software I have, so no way to get, so you just have to hear this. So 5 1 5, and I'm right here, by the way, 5 1 5, and I'm gonna go to these two gray notes, this 5 6 1 2. So you always know, if you're going away from a 5, it's the 6. If you're going away from a 1, it's the 2. If you're going behind a 3, it's the 2. If you're going behind a 1, it's the 6. Okay, so here that sounds kind of musical. There's a logic to it. Well, you're at the 5. You've played some chord tones. You're inside so your solo sounded good. You're inside the notes, but it's good, but then there's boredom too. So you have to kind of add in some tension. So we want to step away. Now I could step to the 2. It sounds like okay, but there's a lot more leaping involved. I'm going from a 2 back to a 6, and then making this major chord shape. Well, actually, 1 to a 2 there. It's or like the interval of was that the interval? Anyways, it's not. Oh, minor. So making a minor chord interval, that's why that doesn't sound as great. It adds a little bit of illogic to your lines. Maybe something you want at the moment, but has a pleasing sound because you're got a nice interval there. And there's a step, a logical step. Logical step, pleasing interval. I went red, blue, green. Away to the 2, back to the 1. I went 1, 1, 6, 1, 5, just to bring in some of that extra tension at that moment. I need to get away. I've resolved, so I'm here in resolve. I'm going to go unresolved at where the plus sign is now to green 5. Kind of end my note there. And I also may end some of my lines before I finally end a line on a green note. I may end on a blue note. There I ended on the blue. Still ending on a 5. I'm waiting to get to that 1 for that final sound that, okay, this line is over. There's logic to your lines. So hopefully you can kind of get that. Red, resolve on red. That's a resolve on a gray note. Notice it kind of didn't kind of do it because that was a resolve on a 6. That's a little better because I resolved to the 5, but I've been stalling a little too long. And finish my line down here on this green note here. So up the chord tone, outside note, back to resolve, stopping the line on the blue note, stopping the note on the line on the red note, gray note, green, stopping my line. Now there I made a little bit of a turnaround on a gray note, but it was kind of a point where I felt like I wanted to have a little bit of unresolved tension because I'm going toward tension at the end of the line. Tension. And I went a little bit too much tension, I felt there, by going from the 3 to back to the 1. Making a turnaround on the green made it a little better, going from the blue 3 right here to the 6. So this understanding is going to give you the fretboard playground. The pentatonics are going to give you the playground. However, this understanding on top of it, this understanding your chord tones and maybe doing this, what do they call this? This synthesia, is it called? I can't remember the name, where you associate colors with your chord tones. If you do that, I kind of actually don't. It's just more of a memorization thing for me, but the shape memorization thing for me, but knowing kind of which shape relates to which pentatonic shape I'm in. You know, you've got this shape, or sorry, this chord shape here. For this shape, I've got for this I've got the C shape for that one. But basically, I was just thinking the G shape, the C shape, and the E shape. D and A a little bit less used, but when you're playing your C shape, you're actually playing your D shape, so it's kind of like CD. And when you're playing your G shape, you're actually in most of the A shape anyway, so you kind of, you know, by playing the C and the G, you've got the A in there anyways. It doesn't really, like, everything overlaps, so it doesn't really matter. But this is going to get you that away from totally just noodling. And so this is like kind of like your like first step of goodness when it comes to improvising. But you want to get a little bit better. Let's take a look at a run here that will be helpful to, especially to get around without that consideration of noodling. Although you want to know, it's basically this pattern here, like an Oreo cookie, the layer on top that is the same layer on bottom, and a funky middle. Well, what's the funky middle? The layer on top is got a one of the gray notes in it, so 1, 2, 3, one of the step tones. The middle's got a step tone from the 5 to the 6, and then you're back to actually the octave above. But this will help you navigate through the you can break this down into like smaller repeating shapes. You could think about 2, 3, 5, 6, and then 2, 3, 5, 6, and how this little square will get you through pentatonics. That's helpful, and some teachers teach that. But for example here, let me get my bearings here. Okay, so we're on the B chord, obviously. you can get from bottom to top of your scale by considering this. So in other words, you know, you can start here, and this occurs anywhere this part of the pentatonic shape occurs. You know, there's a couple different places on the board. You can see it like right here where the plus sign is going around. There's, you know, the 1, 2, 3, and then down here would be 1, 2, 3. You'd be moving into the next box shape, which is this box shape here, blah, blah, blah. You can get the idea. The confusion comes when you have to navigate across the different interval between the G and the B string, which screws up creates like a shroud over every geometric concept of the fretboard, which is one reason that this stays hidden to novice players that try to figure it out for themselves and can't really see how everything links up, because there's that little trick in there that now you know about, you know how to handle. So also, I haven't disappeared yet. Hi, everybody. Like I thought I would, but maybe coming up in some of these other pictures here. So, okay, our run is done here. The run understanding. Just start wherever there's a root. Here's a root in that chord, so I can start it here. And why did that sound? I stepped to the 3 for a turnaround, stepped to the 2, fell back to a green note to give a logical ending to my phrase. Somewhat logical there because I'm ending on the 5. Ending on a 3, which is a little weaker in my ear. Not a full ending, which kind of was expected there. I'm going to end on a gray note. We're way up in, you know, we can't, that would be noodling, because we can't really end there unless, but you can always turn that noodling around by, if you think, oh shit, that's a gray note, because you're just trying to visualize it on your fretboard. But you know the other 2 notes, you could go, well, there's probably some steps here. But we're not at the ending beat yet. So we go blue, green to kind of give it that doorbell ring home. Did you hear that raised 4th in there? You can see how I know it's raised 4th, because that's what experience can do. That Simpson sound. Anyways. Okay, so moving on. Now we want to get into, so from here, we've done what we could to milk and understand and give ourselves great playability on the pentatonic system that will work over any of the 1, 4, or 5 chords. You don't have to have that knowledge. And that's where people say, oh, I don't gotta know that stuff. I know pentatonics. Well, that may be the extent of what they know. And maybe they've got some grasp of this, whether they know it or not. Now, because some people can just use their ear for this. The same way I've developed my ear to know that I just heard that Simpsons tone there. So that could be, you know, why you hear some of these people say this kind of stuff. And so let me do a little switcheroo here and get the, we're going to get this camera off of here. How did I do that last time? How did I shut the camera off? Oh, I think I went like this. Okay, video capture device. Hopefully it doesn't shut the sound off of my voice. I don't think it did last time, so we're going to just kind of hope this works. All right. Just a little test here of the vocals. Yes, I still see my audio meter working, so cool. Okay. And let me get back to my screen here. So here, what we have here is our next understanding. We need to understand the big box of the pentatonic and what it can do to help us plug in the final 2 notes, the gut notes, that'll make this scale, this pentatonic, turn diatonic to either the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord. And well, we'll get into these modal names in a second, but we're going to avoid confusion at the moment. So this big square here, let's look at it as a fretboard navigation standpoint. Notice I've got these lines kind of drawn into this these shapes. And just kind of making sure, oh, you know what I gotta do here? Somehow I gotta get my pointer back. You gotta find the Pointer Sisters. There we go. Okay, so now I'm glad I noticed that so I didn't mess up the lesson with that. Okay, so we've got this shape right here. You can see it elucidated on this fretboard here. Every one of these five pentatonic boxes has one of these shapes in it, a one full shape, and some of them have one full shape and a broken shape, a half shape. Anytime one of these shapes lands on the E string, there's a copy of on the other E string. It happens in two different places, and that helps you get from one square to the other. If I'm in this row, see there's a row here, there's like a connected row, just the same way that, and I'll explain this at the end of the video, but I have plenty of videos on my site that show a basic navigation square across the fretboard that works in the exact same way. The direction of notes in the fretboard can be angular, and it's this way, for lack of a better term. These boxes work on string pairs. It's helpful to know. In this case, we're dealing with you can see like right here is this box. It's right here. And we're dealing with the EA pair, the DG pair, and the BE pair to make nice whole boxes. The second row has a broken box on each of the E strings, and the full boxes occur in A and D, in G and B. And what that does is it creates a broken box here. Once again, that little shift up here between the G and the B string here shrouds the geometry that you can really find, the easy geometry that really makes up this fretboard. To jump between these rows, all you need to do is follow the same as the navigation square that I talked about, that we'll talk about at the end of the video. As is above, so is below. So you just go straight below, and you're in your row here. You're in a broken box. Find your whole box above and go there. You'll find your whole box is in shape number 3 of the pentatonic. Your number 4 shape of the pentatonic holds this middle shape, and your number 5 box. In this instance, some people, in some teachings, this will be called the number 1 box, and it doesn't really matter. You can name these boxes whatever you want. There may be some reason that they're called 1 in certain instances and 2 in others, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. We're using 1 because that's our home base for our chord, our box that contains our initial chord that we could always fall back to if we get lost. So this box shape here, we see how it goes on the fretboard. I didn't elucidate every single box here. I leave that to your imagination to get better, but for all intents and purposes, because there's a box up here, there's a semi-box down here, and we would be right here again, starting the row, going up into this part of the fretboard. So these boxes are all the same exact notes, so they'll always work. And in these boxes, it's kind of handy that you have an arpeggio shape. You have all the chord tones within these boxes, and you just need 2 notes in this gut square here to get to the diatonic understanding, or make them 1, 4, or 5 chords, or in this case of minor, 2, 3, or 6 chords. And it's the funny thing is, it's the same exact understanding as what if you learned in minor, if you studied that already on my last lesson, then you know what we're going to talk about for major here. It's the same thing, and they correspond with each other the same as, well, you say, how can the same gut notes correspond? Well, because obviously the intervals play out differently, and you don't need to know, like, because the next question is, well, why? How is that happening? Well, you don't really need to worry about that. Let's put it that way. There's a understanding. You could, reverse engineer all the understanding, but we don't need to get into that and extend this lesson too far right now. What you need to know is that there's pairs. Modes are these happy and sad work together. Like you can consider the odds and evens. So the 2 minor works with the 4 major. The 6 minor works with the 1 major. And if you know the 3 minor that we went over, you're going to see it's the same 2 gut notes as the 5. I'm sorry, what was the last one we did? 3 is 5. So 6 and 1, 2 and 4. So you can see how like the odd numbers, 3 and 5, 6 and 1, the farthest away, go together, and the 2 and the 4 will be similar in understanding. In just the same way that we did with the minor triad, I can turn a major triad. If this is a 4, there's a minor right there. It could be this could be a, in our case with a B here, we've got if this is a 1, that's a 6. If this was a 4 chord, this is a 2 chord, 2 minor. If this was a 5 chord, this is a 3 minor. Works like that. You don't have to know why that could work like that if it seems impossible at this moment. It'll come clear later in your journey. So here in our shape here, so if we were at let's put ourselves at the bottom of this shape right down here. Hold on, let me get my bearings here. We're on the B. So I could get my camera back here, I think, since we've discussed that that row there, just so you can kind of see where I'm playing, even though nobody looks at this fretboard because you can barely see anything, but I'm at the 4th fret, going to the 7th on the B and E string as the bottom square there. So for my chords, I've got a 3, I've got a 5, and a 1. What's behind the 1? A 6. So I've got 3, 5, 6, root. And the way, just if this was going back to minor, you can hear why this is such a common lick, because you're arpeggiating the minor chord. Minor 3rd, root 5. All right, so what is that? That bent to the 1. Hit the minor 3rd, 5, 1. Oh, that's why I was like hearing something wrong. I put the major in there because I'm sitting here playing tons of major chords. So, all right, that's our understanding. We need to know these boxes, and because we're going to fill in each one of these boxes, but when we find out what we need to plug in, it's the same for every shape. So for example, if I'm in my pentatonic shape here, where would I be? My shape is here down at the bottom. If I was plugging in, let's say these 2 notes, the 2 on the 12th fret, that's what I would do. Just you plug in was showing you, I plugged in the notes here, and as I went up the scale, I also considered this box, and these 2 notes would have been filled in then, and then I added in this note. Okay, so moving on here, final, this is the next understanding you'll need. It's time to add the missing money notes. So that's what these are. The 4 and the 7 have been what's missing. I'll call these the gut notes because they fit inside that, they make the guts of that square. But you can also call these the character notes, and you can see that right here. I've got shading in black that give these. I'll show you in a second how these make the character. Just this one little change makes the character note. But a change from what? A change from here. Natural. That's the next thing you need to know. You need this understanding. And this is the modal pairs I just talked about. With major, we have you need, first of all, just considering major, no pairs of major and minor, just major, the neutral, right? Or what's called natural major. I call it natural major because it corresponds with natural minor. And major, a lot of people kind of will disagree, but major is a mode. Major is Ionian. You can play modes if you play the major scale. You're playing a mode. People can come up with these minor, but, and create this like semantic little thing here. Now, major scale is got a feeling to it. It's a mode. They're all modes. That's why natural minor, but it's Aeolian, but it's natural minor, but it's Aeolian. It's Aeolian. It's natural minor is Aeolian. There really isn't any kind of difference. Here, I'll tell you what the difference is. And it's not really even a difference. Like, if I were to play a song in natural minor, it may have a progression in it that's always getting me back to the 6th chord. So it doesn't really, it may kind of drift off into the hang out on a 4 chord, then it goes to the 2 chord, then the 3 chord, then the 6 chord, or something like that. Or kind of a lot of times, I think 4, 5, and 6, or 2, 4, 5, 6, whatever the chord progression may be. So it may not be so static on 6. When you just have a 6 chord playing for 16 bars, or maybe it's like going 6, then a little bit to the 5 and back to the 6, or even 4, 5, and then 6 keeps on going to the 6. It's got the most bars on 6. Then you're definitely got an Aeolian sound happening because you're so heavy on the 6. Can think like the solo in Stairway to Heaven. So that may be where some people could hash out a difference. But anyways, they're all modes. Let me not belabor this point too much. It just helps to just forget about the exact nuances and just think generally like this. It will help you. So anyways, natural Ionian, natural major. You have a darker version of major that goes with a darker version of minor. The darker version of major is Mixolydian. The lighter version of major is Lydian. It's got more of an uplifting sound because the 4th is raised. Mixolydian has a darker sound because the 7th is flattened. So you can see here why these scales are called neutral, because both major and natural minor, natural major, natural minor, contain these 2 intervals, and they're kind of, you can see how it's kind of balanced, not from one side to the other, and they're using the whole intervals from the scale. So 1, and this is our scale thinking right here, where we want to think right now. Well, actually, this is the scale thinking right here, but consider this. This is the chordal thinking actually right here, but from our 1, we've got this is chordal thinking, sorry. From our 1, in a major context, or in a 1, for the 1 chord, 1 is like, so C, for C major, it would be C, or for B major, where we are right now, it would be B. You have the 1, the 3, then the 4, and the 5, and the 6, and the 7, and the 1. All the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do of the scale. Easy. And that's why major will use this, and minor, but see the other lesson so you don't get confused when I say, well, how can minor be the same when it's different, got the flat third? There's reasons. But anyways, so we've got the 4 and 7, because in that case, it's actually the 2 and the 6 that's reversed from. And it's something easy. Don't let this confuse you, but it's something interesting to know that it's more geometric stuff that the our pentatonics gave us the 2 and the 6 and left out the 4 and the 7 for major. It's the exact opposite for minor. Minor provides you the 4 and the 7 and leaves out the 2 and the 6. But that's beside the point. Anyways, 4 and 7. So we've got the natural notes here, and you can see it's balanced, one on one side, one on the other. We're using the yellow and the purple to designate these outside, or well, inside, but brand new tones to us. Now you can see here on the darker side, we've got that natural 4 still, but we've taken the 7 and we've given it a flat tire. So that flat tire creates a darker sound, or even some people would say a jamboree type of sound. So. And these are the character notes. This one little note right here, this is the magic. It's one note difference. Look at these scales. This is one note difference. This one note creates this modal effect, this darker sound, this difference between a 5 chord and a 1 chord. It's not much, but this character is going to actually be in the scale that you want to use in relation. So if we're playing a 5 chord, we're going to want to make sure that we have this note in our scale thinking, which is here. And for playing the 1, it's these two. And I'm going to show you how you can geometrically plug this into what we just went over. Notice it's the big square. This is what plugs into this understanding right here. And notice this 3, 5, and root. Now let's go over to here, and you can see it's all here, 3, 5, and root. It's what we're talking about. So from top to bottom here again, notice I've put where's the 2? Is a good question. So we've got the root, 3, 5, 6, 4, and 7 in root. So we've got basically root 3, 4, 5, root 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 root. Where's the 2? The 2 is always on the outside of this box here. Not a big deal. It's also on this side of the box here. Just didn't want to put it around one box to create any confusion. So it's on the outside of your box. So if I was in the pentatonic shape here for B, there's my 2. Okay. So in gray here, to start with, this is kind of like what I use to just get the geometry understood quick. If I need to plug this in a jam, now that I know my pentatonic shape here, that I'm going to be jamming right here. Just like the example we used a second ago, if I was going to play a Mixolydian, I'd be plugging in this. This would be I got my gray notes in here. Oops. Trying to get a little Jerry in there, but you really got to be slick with how you walk to these chord tones. And there's a little bit more of Jerry because I put it on a beat better instead of just going, you know, too much of a strong beat on your outside note there. But if you want, like I said, it's really tough to get those outside notes to sound good, but you can get better at that. So anyways, got a little outside, speaking, no pun intended there, outside of my teaching there, but went back to pentatonics. Okay, so if I wanted this lighter sound, let's for a second here, let's throw in this sharp 4 character note and hear it. So here I am back at that same pentatonic. I know I got my box up here. Now we're kind of down low, so that character note doesn't jump out as much. But you hear it there? There's a little bit something more ethereal, I think, about it. Versus this. This is more normal 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Went back to there. Vanilla white bread normal. But here we're going to raise that 4th. I can use that B note as a drone. That's regular, but there's the character. Got a sweet sound to it. Versus that's just normal. You can see why Joe Satriani would choose to give some of his solos and songs that can create cool melody lines just by one character note, that one note change. You can see how, and another reason you want to have this understanding is because you're going to hear this talk. You say, oh, well, the Lydian has the sharp 4. Well, what the hell is that if you don't know what's going on? And now you know. It's this easy to know. This stuff is super easy. Someone just has to show you the geometry of the fretboard. So there's said, oh, well, mixed Lydian, it's a flat 7. Put a flat 7 in there, and they'll give you all this modal, this, and there's a flat 7, and all this confusing jargon. And it's just one note changing in a geometric shape. It's easy. Not for nothing, some people hate this. I found something with my lessons where some people really hate this. It's a lot of people who studied in college and paid big bucks to get through all these mountains of memorization just to arrive at this exact point. And it's like, kind of like you find out it's this easy. You're like, can't freaking be. This guy's a jerk. How can he go buy all my big expensive education by learning this? Well, there was a reason for the big expensive education. It got them a ton more than even I know still. I don't know everything about music theory, but I know a good amount of basics to get me through rock and roll, and get me through pop, and to approach, and I mean like throw a baseball through a window from 2 blocks away. Jazz, right? I'm not even at the doorstep of jazz yet. I'm so, I can go there, 251. Okay, sorry for the tangent there. Anyways, we really don't need to do that, trying to get to the point of these lessons. Down here this is helpful to know, but not necessary. But you may, be confused because you're like, well, wait a minute, Mark, wait a minute. If this is a 5 chord, then that's a 5, then this is a 6, that's a 7, that's a 1, a 2, 3, 4, 5. Then, where are all these intervals coming from? Because all I know is 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, okay, well, that's because you're considering this, you've taken your 5 and you've considered it now the 1, or you are considering it still the 5. If you considered it the 1, it would be this. then it would be 1, 3, 4. Why did I put a 2 in there? Well, that's wrong. Thanks for pointing that out, everybody. All right. Root 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay. Well, that was weird how that got in there. Okay, so I must have been looking at this when I did this. Oh, you know what? I changed everything because I had them out of order, and then I left that in there. Okay, so if you're considering this the 5, then the intervals jump around. And I wanted you to see, like, when it comes to the 1 chord, so you're considering this the actual 1 of the scale, B major, then it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Your gut notes are the 4 and the 7. If you consider this the 4 of your scale, which it is, so let's see in B, let's go 2, 3, 4, we're on E. So it would be 4. We're still in the key of B, but we're 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where those intervals come from. And then once you see that you're playing a 7 and a 3, and so you still got the 7, but there's a 3. On this darker side, you still got the 4, but it's the 1. It's just interesting how this geometry plays out, but it's whimsical and not anything that I actually technically need to do to, think quick on the fly. You just can omit that and just think about this. Think about, this is where your plugin is. You want to that's why they're gray. You don't need to think actually about this but this is great on top knowledge you could have that this is actually the 4 on this level. You're playing with the 4, and on this level you're playing with the 5. So if you were anytime you have one of these squares, so here we are up here in B. These are the gut notes. Incidentally, it's a tritone. Oops. We went to a flat 2. That won't work, but if I'm creating tension with a 4 and the 7, tritone tension, I'm going to go to the root of fallback 3, 4, 3, or 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that didn't sound, the little flat third there didn't sound good. However, speaking of flat thirds, there's a trick I didn't go over. When you're in major, very squarely, there's me bouncing off the flat third. The blues trick there. That's why you hear, oh, you can play the flat third over the major third, or when it's major, you can play a little minor. It sounds cool. This is what they mean. And you can experiment by that by taking your easy 1, 3, 5 and throwing in the taking the third and going 1 fret down and adding in that note. Besides the point here, so we've belabored these character notes. Know your plugins for each. The darker is on, consider this like the dark side, the left side, the dark side. Setting your gut notes both on the right side, the Lydian side, and then the balance side for natural minor, natural major. That's why I call them natural, because you can think of, helps you to kind of click to what you need. Click to the plugin here. All right, so now that we understand that, we can do Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian here. Let's get to those. Let's get to my last lessons here. But anyways, here's the slide we want. Left over from my minor lesson, I changed all these slides over from my minor and lost all that information in the process. But you can see how we've taken the pentatonic shape and broken it up, so you can kind of see, once again, in its own, another way, belaboring a point here of how you arrive at these shapes where you plug them in. And by the way, all you need to, if you plug in the shape here, even though this shape, you know, the same, you're plugging in the same notes. If you think of this shape, this helps you if you're in this number one pentatonic shape here. Well, not number one, but whatever we called it earlier. I don't know, was it number 5 or something? The classic box we all know. If you're breaking it up and you're just in the middle part here, which is part of the run that we talked about earlier, this run here. If you're there, then it helps to think. But you don't have to do that, as long as, what I'm trying to say is, as long as you plug in the gut notes into this shape, you will now have all 7 notes across your fretboard of the major scale to cover all your chords and everything that's going on. So, yeah, you do have to think a little quick if you've got, but you can work things out. Remember, not everything has to be on the fly, and not a lot of guitarists play everything on the fly. A lot of people will work things out and come up with something before you actually start playing. So if you've got your progression is a 4 major, then a 2 minor, then the 5 major, and back to the 3 minor. For whatever reason, probably not a great chord progression, but you know what I'm saying. You can work. You have to change all your thinking of your triads. They're going to go from to. Whoa, got a loose, a bad cable happening here. Probably saving me from a bad chord change, but anyways, what I'm saying is. Those go together because they're working with the typical pairs of either 1 and 6. That could be 5 and 3, or 4 and 2. But anyways, the gut notes will make that, the character notes will make that happen. But you have to quickly think about, major, minor. I'm just trying to say that, this isn't like, what's going to save you forever and ever, and the only thing you're going to ever have to think about to improvise. But this is how you get from nothing to what is the 1 chord, what is the 4 chord, what is the 5 chord, how do I jam over them, and what makes them what they are, all in one understanding, and how you get there in levels. So you've gone from pentatonic here. Here's the outline of our chord within our square box, and we see we're doing Ionian. So as you see in our square box here, we've got the natural 4 and the 7. We'll go. You can see it clearer here. Yellow on the 4, pink on the 7. Just like if we go back to our last thing, yellow on the 4, pink on the 7. That is going to work for if we're in a major chord and we're in Ionian. You can see the same understanding here and here. One. So you'll have to make this for yourself. If you're copying, if you're using notes, let me know in the comments below if you like, hey, you should do PDFs of this. I'll try my best to work these out as PDFs. It's probably not as hard as I think. I just have to master Excel better, and I'm sure there's an easy way to make any Excel screen a PDF. So let me know, especially if you can point me like, here, dude, here's if like there's a ton of Excel, I'll look it up. But there's a ton of Excel lessons on how to do everything in Excel. So if you know the exact lesson, post it in the comments below. I'll be like, here, dude, this is how you make PDFs for us. And we'll do that. Okay, so we're talking about the 1 here, and this is the key to making it happen. You can see all the gut notes are plugged in. For the most part, there's some missing here and there, but within our squares, every time I elucidated a square here. Now, also, you might think, well, Mark, there's one of them big squares right here, and it's got one of them, the shape for mixolydian in it. Well, what's going on with that? Well, that's because these shapes all work in, it's all the major scale. It's just where where you're conceptualizing, where these notes are referencing. This is we're talking about from this root. If this was our 5, yeah, we would have this shape as a big square box because our root would be right here. And this box would be over here, and this box would be over here, and this box would be over here. If that makes any sense, I can show you it like here on, sheet 7 here. Just as a little jump ahead here. Here we've got the 1 chord on B that we've been dealing with. Our 4 chord is on E, and you can see that shape here. And the 5 chord just a whole step up from that, which is dealing with the your basically, some people will call this, because it starts on this 3rd note here, the Phrygian box, even though it has very little to do with actually playing the mode of Phrygian or Phrygian, whatever. And I always hate saying that, and people lose their minds when they start this. They get this modal haze over them. So don't let these names fool you. And this won't get you into really understanding modes, but we need to use that name because that is a somewhat logical name for this shape. And you can see that when we're trying to say what pattern, geometric pattern this purple chord shape falls into, purple major chord falls into, it's for this one, it's in between. So that's where this other shape stuff comes from. So for example, this one, you can see, if you consider the bass, from your understanding of the bass pentatonic, you can see how the square in the pentatonic, we've plugged in these 2 notes, you'll get this black shape, and this part of the master, the gray pattern is the master pattern. So you get that. If you consider the basic pentatonic, once again, it's inside this note. Yes, the pentatonic occurs, every pentatonic occurs 3 different places in the major scale makeup in the geometry of the fretboard. It's another weird geometric thing, and that covers each of the 3 either major or 3 minor chords. So for example, if you can see it happen here within this purple chord, the 4 chord. You have this, now you would have the Lydian shape. It's a 4 chord, Lydian. It's the brighter one. So you put the 2 gut notes on this side, and you can see how it all falls into place here. If you can consider, like, if this gray pattern was static and you're just pasting these chords on, you can see how it naturally falls into place without the thought of taking a blank fretboard with a chord and adding these notes in. It's just like the reverse, but it's cool to be able to think about it in both directions. Like reverse engineering the method here. If any of that makes any sense to you, thank you. Because I know sometimes I watch back and I'm like, I'm thinking about it in my head a certain way, but some of the listeners are going to be like, boy, this guy's going off on a deep end here. He lost me. All right, so, but that's not you. You've got it right. And I'm sure you got it in some other ways I've explained it. From the 5 chord here, you can see once again, our pentatonic shape is there. Our big box is there, and we've got the notes on the left side, the darker 5 pentatonic. The geometry all holds true no matter what way you try to dive in and dissect the information, okay? So moving on to Lydian, I think we can be a little quicker here. It's the same diagram again, but this time I'm trying to elucidate. We've got Lydian, and I'm using these modal names because that's kind of what the character note brings. But just very quickly, Modes happen because a bass note or a high drone note is static over a series of bars of music. So that really brings out a modal sound. There can be other chords, but as long as you're going back to the 4 chord and spending more bars on the 4 chord than all the other chords, you'll have this sound. But to make it super easy, take a piano and make sure someone just plays the 4 chord and then play all the corresponding notes. So in the key of C, if someone just sits there, if you go down to the low side and just play an F chord and give it a little rhythm and play all the white notes, you're still playing the C major scale because all the white notes are the C major scale. But the sound that comes out is going to be Lydian if you're playing that 4 chord, the F, C, D, E, F, because it's about it's about gravity. The low chord is gravity. Even if it's a high pitch, there's a draw toward that's like the static part. And all these moving tones, these melodies, are being compared in your brain to the static tone that's playing. And that is where the modes come from. They come from what's static. People kind of think modes are what the soloist plays, but they're really not. That's the way that everybody gets confused, and it's a very technical way of explaining. People explain modal scales all the time. So, oh, it's this scale, it's this scale. That doesn't matter. You'll never, if you're feeling lost on modes, that's why, because someone isn't telling you the real deal. It's about the static of the music. Where is the tonic tonal center? If the tonal center is on the 1, you're playing in major. If the tonal center is on the 4 chord, you're playing in Lydian. If the tonal center is on the 5 chord, you're playing in Mixolydian. And that's why anybody would say this is the 2 chord, or this is the 4 chord, or this is the 5 chord, because they want there's a certain tonal center that's created by these, and there's a mood that's created by these tonal centers that's important to the music. So probably important to the creator of the music trying to impart this emotional picture, if you will, sonic picture to the audience. So that's where this stuff comes in and has some importance and relates to these modal names, if you will. And that's why I will use not just say the 4 chord, I'm saying Lydian 4 chord and Mixolydian 5 chord and Ionian 1 chord, because that also gets you into the flow, into the mix as a new player better, into the understanding of where all this stuff is coming from. So that being said, here we are on Lydian, and as you can see, there's my chord. My pentatonic is there. My big box is here. And my gut notes are here. And the character note is right there. Creating a tritone, that dangerous, danger, avoid the devil tone from the 1800s. So here I went, I missed the character note. Buried in there in all the mud of the 1 and the 5, but wait a minute. Batman used Lydian? Well, the character note from Lydian. So anyways, yeah. Well, I think that was more just really walking some tones from the four, sharp 4, 5. can hear the 1, 4, 5 there. Okay, so fooling around aside, you can hopefully we can get the 4s. We got to move on and shorten up this lesson. The 5, same thing. We've got our chord shape. There's our pentatonic square. There's our square there, square there, square there. So we know whatever shape we're in. Let's do this shape right now. This one that's usually the odd man out. In favor of its neighboring. We're a little bit off from our B chord. Our normal pentatonic shape that everybody knows. Now that's our character note right there. Now that's the same as major. So if you played that melody line, it kind of would be the 1 mostly, because that's what most people associate, versus the 5 until you play that flat tire 7. Now, you can hear it's very soulful to bend half notes. And one important thing I wanted to say about this lesson that I've kind of missed this whole time is that these are the half steps. I kind of brought that up earlier, if you remember. It's about 20 minutes ago. The half steps are the money notes because they create that little half step bend. It's very soulful and shows precision because, you know, bends are typically a whole step to get to that whole step note. And when you bend that half note to a note that you are actually trying to elucidate in a scale, excuse my preening here, then it's somewhat soulful, I guess. So repeat that word. Brings out a nice understanding that you're in full understanding of where you are on the fretboard and what you're doing, and as well as being nice juicy notes, juicy bends there, or hammer-ons, or slide intos, whatever you want to call them. And then this also, finally, all these understandings leave you with the unusual or super spice notes. You don't have to consider these total unplayable notes. You can add in a little Jerry Garcia by playing them. So, for example, see, I'm getting a little logic into that. There's the wrong note right there. Now, the reason it works is in this big square. Remember, this, you know, if you were in Lydian, you would be using these. So you're there's a little bit of leeway with these off notes here because you're just kind of shifting the tonality a little bit. You're changing a 4 chord to a 5 chord, a 5 chord to a 4 chord, a 4 chord to a 1 chord, a 1 chord to a 4, blah, blah, blah. And so because it's only a slight shift in understanding, if you grace these notes in a direction traveling to a home, especially traveling towards resolution, you can get away, especially if it's a quicker note in the progression. Like, for example, so that's where you get that little emotional kind of like hiccup in there because it was a quote unquote wrong note, but not too wrong is what I'm saying. See, I want to really kind of elucidate that, hey, yeah, this is Mixolydian, so I want that character note. Get a little soul in there by bending a little bit back to it. sort of ended the line on a on a 4. Not the greatest, but I'm going resolving it to a 1. Kind of like, you know, hung up on tension, 10, a little walk around and back to the ending the phrase on the 1 on a strong beat. I'm going to leave you guys with that. Well, no, I'm not. I'm not going to leave you guys. You don't want me to leave. We went over this, the 1, the 4, and the 5. Let's move on to our final sheet here of the day. Remember, this would be well, now it's not the time to tell you the lesson is, we are at the long point of lesson, but it's a longer lesson today. Great time for me to tell you. Because I created so many sheets about this, and it is time for me to get going because I hear people coming home. The final thing we'll wrap up with is our navigation squares here that we've gone over a million times in other lessons. You can see this, the traveling is the same way. It's as is above, is so is below. And it gives you all the notes of the scale. If you consider this is once you've got your half step box, you notice if you take this big box, consider this one, it's the Lydian side. If the box is here, it's the Mixolydian side. If you've got notes somewhere else, it becomes it even becomes, like you can see right here, if we make the box, it's if our chord was here, it would be right here, it would be, this is where our box would be. It'd be making if we put our chord here, it'd be making the Aeolian or the one, the Ionian. Ionian, Aeolian is a pair. That's why I sometimes slip up and say one or the other. Chord shape, major chord shape here would be our Lydian. Major chord shape here would be our Mixolydian. But you can get around this whole by using this thing. You get all the notes here, this navigation square, you get all the notes you get, and this half square will guide you because if you're in one square here at the corner, and then you got the other final, and every time you're in that square, you're in one of the pentatonic, well, actually, one of the larger shapes known as the Aeolian scale, the Dorian scale, the Phrygian scale. As a matter of fact, if you're down here, you're toggling in between Dorian and Phrygian, this shape here and this shape here. And then if you're if you find your box, if you move up and you find your box up here, like these two are still, this one is definitely in Dorian, this one is in Dorian and Phrygian, this one is these two are in Phrygian right here. But then these two right here, the broken box and this one up here, are in Aeolian. And depending on what box you're next to, you'll know what full scale shape you are. And that can really help you navigate the fretboard without, maybe while you try to overlap this knowledge of chord tones and where you are. They may be confusing to get it all in one compact layer of information. I still don't really do that yet. But when I need to feel lost and I just need to navigate, my mind will switch to this. When I'm secure about where I am and I can want to elucidate my character notes, I'll switch to this, or perhaps this, or this for 1, 4, or 5, while also knowing this. My basic triad shapes from a root. Thanks very much. Hope this was a quality lesson for you. It's what I think of when we have a 1, a 4, or a 5 major chord from ground zero up to full scale up and down the fretboard. At the very least, smash that like button and say, hey, this was cool and this was helpful, or I thought it was at least interesting. I watched half of it and I thought it was cool, and you had to go. Hit that like button. The best, hit the subscribe and hit notifications so you know when I throw one of these other videos up, because I'm pretty sporadic about it, but lately I've been trying to do it more and more. All right, you guys are awesome. Have a great day, and I'll do that thing with the camera. No, I won't, because I still got to get to the point where I shut it off. But thank you guys for watching. And remember, keep jamming. You're awesome. See you.